Hello, listening people.
Hello.
You're listening to Spit and Posh Presents Pictures Powwow. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Swinsky.
And I'm Bartek.
How are you, Bartek?
I'm doing pretty well, Ryan. How are you?
Doing pretty good, considering the world is falling apart.
Our world is.
The world is. It's not just our world, Bartek, but this will be one of the last times we record in the same location, Bartek.
That's right. This dimension also has problems. Yeah.
This dimension also has problems, yes.
The coronavirus. Yeah.
Due to Melbourne sucking,
Yeah,
it was like, you guys can podcast again in the same room, and then it was like, no, you can't, instantly. So this will be the last time for a little bit, and then for the next apparent 6 weeks, we'll we'll be doing long distance again. So have fun for that, listening people. But Bartek, instead of wallowing in the sadness that is a global pandemic, we are here to do our show in which we talk about a movie that's come recommended. You recommended the movie for this episode.
I did.
So tell us, remind us what the movie you chose was.
I picked the 2006 film Grbavica.
Which has multiple titles.
Which does have multiple titles. I think the American one was Land of Our Dreams after Grbavica.
Yeah.
And I believe in England it was Esma's Secret. Don't tell anyone. Her secret.
So that's from 2006. And where's this movie from again?
It is a Bosnian film, although it's a co-production with a bunch of countries.
I saw that at the beginning. I was like, there's a lot of countries involved in this. This is a conglomerate of countries.
I remember there was Austria, but I can't remember the rest.
I think Germany was involved too.
Germany, yeah. They've always been close with Austria.
Yeah, you say. So we are covering that movie. So for the point of this discussion, there will be spoilers. So we will reveal her secret.
We'll reveal the secret.
So if you have not had the chance to watch this film, it is available on YouTube, but you will have to source your own subtitles, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think there are 2 uploads on YouTube and neither have subtitles.
So let's get into it, Bartek. I, of course, do not have a history with this movie. Most of the foreign films that you pick are obscure ones that you have seen. Like, even for foreign film picks, they're like, oh yeah, we're all lining up to see. I'm trying to think of one that proves my point. I don't know, Wolf Children? I guess the furries know that one. I guess I'm wrong. All the foreign films are the ones that I at least haven't seen. You haven't picked one that's like, The Hunt? Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, well, I've been thinking about that one. Yeah, every second pick I pick is meant to be like a wild card.
It's a wild ride. So I haven't seen this movie. I have no attachment to it. I watched it for this, and it was an interesting experience. Bartek, what about your history with this? Why did you choose this?
So this was one of the films that I watched in a film class in the second year of uni. It was called Cinemas and Cultures, where we watched films from, I believe it was French African films, New Zealand films, Indian films, and a few Slavic films. So this one obviously fell into the Slavic category.
What was the French African film?
We actually saw quite a few French African films. I remember there was one called Keta.
So wait, is it a French African, is it a French film and an African film?
It's an African film, but from like the parts of Africa that have like French.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I just know a thing that I think of. I'm not going, I wonder what those French African films are like.
Yeah.
Are they like new
They
wave?
were called Francophone films. We saw a couple. I remember there was one called Keta, and obviously since the subject was called Cinemas and Cultures, it was all about like
cinema and culture. Cinemas
and cultures, how the cultures are represented in cinema. And I remember that one was about how in certain, and this, anyone listening, this has nothing to do with Grbavica, in this culture, like every young man has a sort of coming of age where their families, I guess like wise spiritual person that every family supposedly has comes to visit them and tells them about like life and stuff.
And for anyone watching, this still also has nothing to do with the film that we're actually discussing.
It's about the subject, yeah.
But for people tasting, it is.
Yes. Look forward to 6 weeks from now when I pick Keita. There were a bunch of those kind of films. And this one was... I picked this one because I remember at the end of this subject, we had this like online test thing. And we had to pick one of the films that we watched for the subject, and each category had like their own essay prompt. And I remember I picked this one for that.
Cool. And did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I remember enjoying it at the time, and I was keen to revisit it, and it was still, a decent little film, I reckon.
You still enjoyed it on this watch?
Yeah,
More, less, equal?
maybe equal.
You're always that. It's
Yeah.
never like it really changed on a groundbreaking level. You're always like, yeah, I liked it still.
I've grown up though. I reread that essay I wrote. It was shit.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't like it.
I have reread essays I've written and I'm just like, yep, still reads correct.
I mean,
I'll hand it in again.
I wasn't wrong in it, but
Did you get a high distinction for it?
I don't know what mark I got for it. No.
So I did not do this as a university assignment. I did this for the pod, and I am going to say I did not like this film. Not hated, I just didn't like it. And one of the weird things about it is I really wish you didn't tell me the other titles to the movie.
Yeah.
Because there's that one, what was it? Esma's Secret?
Yeah.
Esma? Or Isma?
Esma.
Esma's Secret. That in itself tells me, like, it makes me, subconsciously is making me think of what the film is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm watching the film going, oh, this main character has a secret. And that impaired my viewing on a level. And this is the important thing. It's not your fault. It's the fault of the naming of the movie in certain locations. See, a title can really be important to a film.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about how a title has, like, impaired our viewing of a film, but this one has done that for me because I was going into it, not, like, I didn't look up the plot. I didn't look up anything. I just heard, like, I just remember that title because I made that joke after. I was like, shh, and you were like, don't tell anyone, and that got stuck in my brain of that title, and it made me go, oh, so what's this character's big reveal in the movie going to be? And as soon as the movie opened up, there's a scene where her daughter wakes her up and she pins her to the floor, and I immediately went, oh, okay, it's going to be this, this, and this. And although I didn't get the excruciating details of what happened to her, correct, of, what she recounts in her story, I did get the details and the beats correct immediately. And the beats of the movie were just watching it play out in 90 minutes when I figured it out in 2 seconds because of the title. The title ruined that impact. Because if that title didn't exist and I didn't know about it, I just heard what the actual title is of this place, I wouldn't have known that. I would have just been like, okay, this is an interesting character study. Where's this going to go? What's this about? It's like a slice of life thing, or and this and this. And I'm not saying I wouldn't have picked up on the obvious kind of PTSD trauma of her, but I wouldn't have picked up on the exact kind of revelation, and not just the revelation, but the beats of how that revelation is going to play out. Because I've watched a lot of movies, and we've discussed a lot of storytelling mechanics and rhythms and beats, and it is just so unfortunate that I did not enjoy this movie because the thrust of it was taken away because of a title.
Yeah, I noticed that even when you look up the films, all the synopses pretty much begin with, like, Esma was raped by Chetniks in the war. So even it's not really meant to be a mystery, it seems.
But in the movie, it
takes...
plays out, like, it's not like a Shyamalan twist, like, it's not a big surprise, but in the movie, when you actually watch it, it is a slow unfolding.
Yeah, it's
thing.
It's right near the end, like third or fourth last scene, where, like, it's said out loud what happened.
And it's not like if I had seen it like you did in uni and then we did it for this, it wouldn't be like that. I don't think necessarily a second viewing would have been hampered by me knowing where the plot goes and watching it play out. But for a first time viewing, you just go, well, I know how this is going to go, and I know how the story is going to be told, and I'm just watching it for, like, my brain has already formed it in less than a minute, and now I have to watch it play out for 90 minutes. And it's not doing anything that surprised me. It's not doing anything counter to what I hadn't already figured out because of the fucking title. And like what you said, if you do a quick look, it tells you on all these synopses, and it's just... That's unfortunate because it did lessen the impact of the story, and instead I just got annoyed at characters. I got annoyed at her daughter, but I always get annoyed at characters like that in movies and stories. Maybe because I can't relate to that kind of child. I wasn't that type of child myself.
Mm.
My sister was more like that type of child, and my wife Rachel says she was more of that type of child. So maybe that's that's a personal thing. But these type of bratty, ungrateful children characters, I've always disliked in movies because I can't relate to that. Like, sure, I've been bratty and disrespectful and all of that. Sure, I mean we all have at some point, especially to our parents. But every single action she made in this movie, I just was like, you fucking. I just got so annoyed at her.
Mm.
So what do you think about all that, Bartek?
Yeah, so I watched the film knowing what it was, and I was getting the impression that like it was meant to be like an open secret. Like this film was, it's a Bosnian film. Bosnian people probably know Bosnian history, and they know about like systemic rapes that happened during the war and stuff like that. So it was more about the fact that if we were looking at the title, which I think it was the British title, Esma's Secret, it's more that it was a secret to the daughter, but not so much to
the audience,
else, really.
Yeah, I'm not holding the film accountable
I
for this.
Yeah.
It is just the unfortunate, baggage that I carried in with me due to just the British. Dang it!
They make everything worse.
Are you that familiar with Bosnian history?
No. This might be the only thing I really know about Bosnia.
Did that impact your viewing?
Knowing what the secret was?
No. Not knowing Bosnian history or culture.
I think the film sort of gave you enough pieces in a way to kind of understand what was going on, but I think there might be subconscious stuff going on in my head of I learned some of this historical pretext before watching the film, so I might have had it in my head that this film is all about a look at then modern day Sarajevo as it has been impacted by the war that happened a dozen years prior.
It did unfortunately impact my viewing because I don't know anything about it. I don't know their history. I don't know much about their culture, unfortunately. It's not like I've got out of my way and been like, how dare they? They're not going to be learned in my brain. It has just not been something that has been distributed to me. And I don't want to hold the film accountable either because it's obviously not made for us.
Mm-hmm.
It is made for the people, for them, for this culture. It's an examination and a look into how that has affected them. And we have many Australian movies that are great movies, but there is a certain level of cultural understanding. We understand why movies like The Castle, say, are funny. Because we understand the Australianisms and cultural touchstone points, and
we'd have apprehensions towards which ones we would recommend for overseas listeners or anything like that.
That's correct. And we have a few movies too that deal with atrocities or bad stuff that has happened in Australia, but more often than not, those kind of movies have a more obvious story being told that even an international viewer can understand, which was colonialism was bad. Is a lot of that for Australia. So again, that isn't a fault of this film, but I did feel like I should have done a bit of learning before watching the movie to understand the context of the film.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I was wondering is it giving enough information for someone that wouldn't know?
I think it gave just enough. It scraped through just enough. But that was because as a viewer, I knew I was watching this for the podcast and I had to be very analytical in my viewing of it and being very precise in my viewing of it and making sure of noting details and being a keen-eyed watcher of it. So that is a different viewing experience to just a common person. If I was just watching this as it was, you had just casually recommended it to me, and I watched it.
And you're a neutral viewer who's wow me.
Yeah, inform me. Yeah, wow me. I don't know if it would have crossed that line, but for me, in this viewing experience, of course, for the way we watch things for the podcast, yeah, it did scrape over the line. But for a common viewer, I don't know if it would. if they don't know the history or the context of what has happened in the past. I did not necessarily hate the film. I just didn't enjoy it because the beats were already played out. And one of the unfortunate things is the copy that you gave me
Yeah,
is a low res copy, and the subtitles were iffy here and there. So
yeah, I noticed. I watched the same one.
again, not of the fault of this film, but of the fault of the viewing experience of the movie. If there was an easier way to obtain this film, then it would be higher praise. But unfortunately, this is also a comment on the film. We commented this on our monthly episode of the televisual event where we talked about Double the Fist, in which one of the unfortunate faults of that show is accessibility to that show. Luckily, that's on YouTube, and that has good quality on YouTube, but if you want physical copies, it's a harder deal.
Yeah.
This film seems to be a little bit hard to attain a copy of if you...
Yeah, attain a higher quality one.
Yeah, higher quality copy to fully appreciate the acting and the direction of the movie. Because there were some shots where I was like, it's just too low res for me to make out what's happening. Like at the very beginning when the daughter and her are wrestling around, I'm like, is this a child or is this a full-grown adult? Who is, like, I don't know, I can't tell.
Yeah, you didn't get a full look at her.
And I'm watching it on my big TV, so the low res is really low res.
Yeah, I watched off my monitor from a distance. Yeah, if it was 7 years ago, I would have had access to like the university's online thing because all the films were uploaded onto the D2L or whatever they called it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. But, yeah, it just didn't hit strongly for me. I think the acting, although there's a language barrier, of course, I think the acting was very good, though. I was completely convinced by our lead actress. She really felt like a real person. She looked like a real person. She didn't feel like an actress.
Yeah.
She felt real. And there were just so many devastating scenes that genuinely do hit. And I was emotionally compelled at several points in the movie, even though they were beats I knew would play out. The performance at the center of this all is just that good. What did you think?
No, I agree completely. And having watched it again and knowing, everything about who she is and what it was an open secret, basically. We all kind of knew that something serious had happened. But
No, it's a secret.
Shh, it's a secret to Sarah. Yeah, just like all the little moments of like her interactions with men versus her interactions with women, which like one is very like apprehensive, one's very open and understanding. It just all fit into place and it all matched who the character was that I knew.
Yeah, I agree with the interactions between the men and the women stuff was done particularly well. I do wish, however, that the love interest character, the guy,
Yeah.
I wish that it felt like there was more of a purpose to him.
Yeah, one of the things that
They show his mum, they give you all this stuff, and then he's just kind of... It doesn't feel like it really goes anywhere. Like, it does serve a purpose to the movie, but I just don't feel satisfied with it.
I feel like he was more prevalent when I first watched it. Yeah, it was odd watching it again and seeing, like, I thought he was straight up like known boyfriend character, but he was kind of another secret of Esma's.
Yeah, because the daughter's a bitch.
Yeah.
I wish he kind of served a purpose. We spent so much time with him as well, like, in retrospect of, like, things that don't actually matter. Like, we show his mother. That was a nice scene. I enjoyed that. It showed that he has some humanity to him. He wasn't just a guy using her for whatever purposes, because when you first meet him, you don't know, right?
Well, yeah, he's working with, like, the kind of sleazy people.
Yeah, and then you have that whole sequence where he's talking about, like, they're talking about, like, oh, we're going to kill this guy, and it's... Well, I don't know, that really just felt like we needed a scene.
Yeah.
And for a movie that's about her, any scenes where it wasn't about her felt perfunctory or felt added on because either we need the time or the filmmakers want to flesh out these other characters, but that's not the point of this story. The point of the story is about her and the daughter. The scenes about those two characters are the ones that matter, and then when you have scenes outside of them, revolving around other people, it just feels like time is being filled.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd mix, isn't it? Because like the whole idea of the film is you're meant to see what life is like based on the war, so you have to see more than just the two main characters, but the two main characters are the ones that get the most development.
Like, I thought it worked well enough when we saw all these other characters in the periphery of our two main characters, like the mother, the mother's friend, and the people at the club, the girl who's like, show your tits, and then she puts on a top that barely shows her tits, and it was very confusing.
Yeah.
I know it was 2006, but come on.
Well, she was showing it to the audience before she put it on
Yeah,
the top.
yeah, she was washing them. And
You'll get tips from the viewers.
we see that old lady who, our main character talks to at the mall or whatever.
I heard the aunt.
The aunt, and you see the people at the what is that? The counseling group?
Yeah,
I don't know
seems to be like
exactly
a
what that is.
Welfare counseling help group kind of thing.
All of those things worked, and I liked the guy. I thought he was a charismatic actor, even with language barrier. But at the end, you don't get a satisfying conclusion with him. You get a non-ending with him, and I understand the point of that. But a conclusion is very important because it can feel like it can affect the rest of it, and his conclusion affected the rest of his story because it felt like it didn't go anywhere, and it just made me go, oh, that was kind of wasteful.
Yeah.
Because what is actually being said with him as a character, Bartek? What's being said?
Yeah, it's a good point, because he's got all these characters that he's associated with that Esma isn't associated with. You get all these scenes with them. And, I watched the film, I paid attention to it, but when I think back on, like, oh, there's that scene where he was, like, boxing with someone.
With the bald guy,
Yeah, with the bald guy. There was the scene where, like, he met with a guy that wanted to put, like, a hit out on someone, and they were commenting about how, life had changed since the war, people were kinder back then. He just had all these characters, and in the end, the only, like, meaningful arc we really got was his scenes with Esma. So,
yeah, and the fact that at the end he beats up that guy to protect her, and he stands up for her, and he's a good man. But we already knew that from the other scenes, like the scenes with his mother, or that scene in the car where they're talking about the war before, and he was like, bullshit. We knew he was a good man for the majority of his story. Like at the intro, you weren't too sure, like when he was chatting her up and wanting to take her out on around the city. But we knew he was a good man. There was no question of that. But at the end, it's like, oh, he did the right thing. Wasn't he always going to do the right thing? Like it didn't feel like an arc necessarily. It felt like just an obvious character action. It didn't feel like he swelled up and that kind of stuff. But maybe the arc is that they kiss at the end.
Oh, they do, yeah.
And the daughter sees it and she's like, I'm going to pull a gun on my mum.
Look forward to Grbavica 2.
Yeah. Sarah's Revenge.
Sarah grows her hair back, the guy comes back.
No, she grows a mohawk and she becomes a girl with a dragon tattoo. I found him charismatic. You know what I would love? If this was a series of movies where this is her story, and then we have a movie that's his story, and then, like they're converging things, and there may be like a trio of movies that are like a romance, like a blossoming romance, but also like trauma-based character dramas.
The Grbavica stories or something.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
It would be, yeah.
Because I found him compelling. Like, that's what makes it so much of a bummer that his story kind of feels like it goes nowhere and it kind of feels perfunctory in the long run, because I found him charismatic, I found him intriguing and interesting, and I was compelled that he was a good guy. I don't want to make a criticism in a negative way that, oh, at the end he did a good thing and that's a shock. I like that he was a good guy. I like that the film told us that early on. I just wish it mattered in the long run. I just don't, like, if you removed his scenes, really, there's not much there other than you would miss out on she's having some kind of positive relationship at all outside
with a male.
With a male, and that's kind of it. I get that. That's important, but he just feels like a tool to use to necessitate that story.
Yeah, a tool with a lot of potential.
Yeah, with a lot of potential. I thought you said potential, and I'm like,
Yeah, I was saying potential, but then my
pretentious.
lips like touched and it sounded like I had an extra letter there. Potential.
Was there any particular scenes that you want to talk about, or anything that really struck you on this watch?
In terms of striking, in terms of being strike on me,
God, get him.
so this is obviously a Slavic film, and we're Slavic fellows.
Yarb.
Yeah, and I've been to Poland, and that's within the vicinity of Bosnia.
And we've also experienced war.
We have. There's a current like COVID thing going on. War against COVID number 19.
Is that the fault of Polish women? Because if I'm a Polish male, I've got to blame women for something.
Shit, you are a Polish male.
I nailed it.
But what I was going to say is obviously there is a little bit of like overlap with a bunch of Slavic nations.
Of
And
course.
even visually, like I've been to Poland in the winter, this place kind of looked 80% kind of like some places in Poland that I've been during winter, like the winter fashion that they wore, the like looks of a lot of the characters, and even like the language. I think I caught like every 10 words being like, I know what that word means because I know Polish.
I was going to ask you that if there was some overlap between the language.
That's always the thing when I watch Slavic things. I'm always like, I know that word.
It's
I know that word.
It's like when we watched Lemonade Joe, a great
I haven't-
film,
yeah, I
a
haven't-
great film, and
yeah.
you will be like, yeah, I kind of get that, or maybe, and sometimes you're like, the subtitles, like, yeah, that's a way to say that, I guess,
Yeah.
or you're like, well, maybe that is a bit different, like that sounds somewhat like it, but not actually like it in Polish.
It's always the thing I find really neat when I watch like Slavic things, even and Russian's like the big one that you hear in entertainment, so I get it sometimes with that. But yeah, just the fact that I kind of had a familiarity with the locations that I was seeing, the types of people I was seeing, I found that was also kind of compelling for me.
What do you think the direction of the movie, the way it was shot, and the way it was made?
Yeah, I think
Considering the quality we watched,
Yeah.
we have to be merciful.
I think it would have been
because
better if I was a bit closer to my computer.
That's your fault.
No, I saw fine. Yeah, I think the essay question was actually about like shot composition and stuff. I think it was like
You should have brought your essay and read an excerpt of it to really highlight how bad it was. That would have been fun for me.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. The essay question was like about
You've told so many embarrassing stories on this podcast, and now you're like, my academic thing from like 8-9 years
You're right.
ago.
The other episode I was talking about how you can't have shame.
Yeah, exactly. Hypocrite.
The question was basically about like the representation of like children characters through like shot composition and stuff. So I was saying like really obvious things like, oh, this close up of Sarah was meant to unnerve the audience, I think,
Because she's bold.
Well, no, that was before the gun.
Oh, which she was bold during.
No. She shaved her head after she found
the
out
gun. Yes,
that her father was not a shaheed.
Of course. I liked the way this movie was shot. It was just very matter of fact. There was no bizarre editing choices. Everything flowed together. There was no weird music choices. It all, well, except for the end credits. That was a bit of a weird one. Like you have like this very like, the movie's over, and then like
Felt like a
I don't even-
romantic kind of Spanish.
yeah, I was
ballad.
gonna say, like, I don't even know how to replicate the noise with my mouth because I only heard it the once, but it was very.
I feel like you need like the guitar.
Yeah, it was like a Bollywood ending.
Yeah, it felt a bit more Spanish to me than
But
Indian.
I thought the film was shot very nicely. The locations, like you said, looked good and looked interesting and looked, obviously lived in. But it felt like I was there. That I bought the environment. I liked it. Again, translation thing could be a bit off, and language barrier. But there was some acting that was a little bit, I don't know, like her teacher. I don't know. I didn't. Again, it's a language barrier, so maybe I'm not getting it. But I didn't buy him.
I did notice that, like, even when he read his like poem in the classroom, like the subtitles were rhyming, so it's like, okay, maybe there's a bit of.
But the way his physicality, he was very like stiff and awkward, and he was an awkward character though. In his defense, so
He told them to kiss.
Yeah, and maybe that's a valid performance choice, but from my point of view, he seemed a bit off. Obviously, most of the children were fucking terrible. Like her boyfriend character, I didn't think he was very good performance-wise. The daughter's boyfriend character, I can't even remember his name. The one that gave her a gun.
Yeah.
And the school bully girls that like attack her in the toilet or try to tell her off in the toilet, they sucked. Stuff like that. I didn't really care for the acting from that aunt character either. She felt very much like, I'm here to say things.
I definitely have breast cancer. I'm sorry, that was a mother.
You're not my fucking mother.
No, I'm Lisa's mum.
Oh, God. But it wasn't that bad. But, yeah, I felt like some of that was a little bit like, I don't know. A scene that I found particularly striking and interesting, and it made me think, made me feel, was when she's at the club and she's watching that woman get like basically mauled on the dance floor.
The one that makes her like run away and cry, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a very impactful scene. It felt very raw and yeah, it makes you in her headspace. At that point, we haven't been revealed to the open secret, but it puts you in that headspace of why she reacts like that. Because sometimes in these movies, when a character reacts negatively to a seemingly innocuous, everyday detail, like this is a club, of course people are going to be kind of like, raw and sexual.
Yeah.
But we've been so ingratiated in this character's headspace without it being explicitly said at that point what her headspace is coming from. It felt natural. That's the biggest strength of this movie. Even through the language barrier, it feels very natural. It feels very true and raw.
Yeah. And all the natural stuff comes across very like simply.
Although I didn't like the daughter character, she did feel natural and raw. Like those people, those kind of children, those kind of people do exist. It's just, as a viewer, I just don't like watching them. Yeah. They're like, they just fucking, like I hate them. It just because what they serve in a narrative sense is instigators of drama all the time. Instigators of drama. Oh, she's gonna do this. That's gonna piss off the mum, and then that's gonna spin off into this. Oh, she's pissed off the mum's friend. That means the mum's gonna. You know what I'm talking about? I was waiting for the end. Oh, she shaved her head. Fuck, what's this going to lead to? But then the movie was like, nah, we're running out of time. We can't do anything with that. Like, we're not going to really have an issue with that.
We have to start production on the guy's film.
Yeah. What would his film be called? Because we got the third one, Sarah's Revenge. Sarah's Revenge.
What country was he moving to again?
Oh, I can't remember. I can't remember. Croatia? I can't remember where he was moving to.
It's his journey to that country.
What was his character's name?
I think it began with a S or a T.
God, Bartek, how could you not remember his name?
I want to say Samir, but I think that was the guy that gave Sarah the gun.
Samir. Anything else you want to say about this movie? This is a movie you recommended. Yeah. Any further thoughts or things you want to discuss, like scenes or things that you got from the movie?
I think we've hit most of them. I think I had something, but then we talked about the club scene, and I was agreeing with you there. It was going to be something very similar to that. I think maybe even like the bus scene earlier on where like she's sitting down, there are children singing, and she's like kind of like, oh, this is nice, but then like it gets crowded and she like looks right into that guy's chest.
Yeah, and you get that POV shot of the guy's chest. It was that. See, that was a different style of direction compared to the rest of the movie. Like, you didn't get many other shots like that.
Like first-person shots.
Yeah, and that close-up and that kind of, like, juxtaposition shots. But it worked for the necessity of the scene, and it didn't, like, stand out in a bad way. Yeah, the film did a good balancing act of just naturalistic, but also, obviously you have to play things up because it's a film.
Yeah.
I can't think of much else to say about this movie. It was very straightforward, to the point. I think this film, out of the ones that you recommended, there's been like two. I want to say like two now, maybe three. I can't remember, of ones that have dealt with like victims of sexual abuse. I know Uno was one that we covered that did that.
Yeah.
this is probably the one that's covered it the best, in the most mature fashion. The one that I understood the characters' choices. Like in Una, there were so many choices Rooney Mara's characters made that her character made that I was just like, I just don't understand. Other than this needs to happen for the drama to happen.
By the end, you don't fully understand the character when it feels like you should.
While in this film, like, again, the daughter's a drama machine, but I understand why she's doing these things. I do understand,
she's
although
got this pride about who her father was,
and she's an angsty teen girl who is getting bullied, and she's unsure of herself, and she has friends. At least she does have friends, but yeah, and she's rebellious, and she's just going through that phase where she doesn't know who she is.
She has scenes where she's like very sweet with the mum, but then most of them are
See, talking about it, my attitude has improved on it. Like, I don't love the film, but like, it is that thing of, man, I really wish that I didn't know that title so that I could watch it and not construct the movie ahead of the movie.
Yeah, I think
it's like if I had told you beforehand the twists to Unbreakable. If I said to you, well, Bartek, Unbreakable's a secret superhero movie, and Sam Jackson's this, then you watch the movie, it's like, oh, right, this is how it's playing out, huh?
Yeah.
As a first-time viewing, that would be disruptive.
Yeah, it's crazy, because, like, the only information I gave you, and even when I mentioned the synopsis, is, like, all things that would be the first things you notice when you look it up, because, you know, you're an English speaker, so you'd be like, oh, this film with this really weird title that you probably can't pronounce just by looking at the first three letters, yeah, it's called this and this in other countries. And also this is the first line of every synopsis is, she was raped by Chetniks.
Which is a weird thing to drop there, but, you know, I don't know, for considering how the movie plays that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, yeah, we all know the secret twists to some M. Night Shyamalan movies, but it's like they shouldn't put them in the synopsis. Like, this is the one where Bruce Willis is this.
Yes, I think we can all agree that this film is comparable to, and even though I'm saying this long sentence, I'm blanking on the film's title, the one that we did with the Chats Pod people. Max
Keeble's Big Day Out. No, Big
Move?
Big Move.
Yeah. How the synopsis...
how we were told it had twists.
Yeah, how we were told it had twists, but also in the synopsis it's like, but then he doesn't move. Hijinks, but then that's like in the last fifth of the film.
Yeah, very odd. Are you ready to hear my recommendation?
I am.
Now, are you sure you're ready?
Yes, why am I... Yeah.
Bartek was like rubbing himself on his sides, being like, I'm unsure, I don't know.
Thank you for specifying sides, because...
He was rubbing himself because he's a Polish male.
I'm going to sit down.
He's going to sit down to hear this. You need to sit down because you're going to be shocked by my choice.
Yeah, Grbavica 2?
It's time, Bartek.
Oh, it's one of them.
It's time. What do you mean by that?
I don't know, but there's a lot of films where it's like, oh, we're going to do that one day. And
it's time,
it's going to be one of those.
It's time for Venom.
Oh.
It's time for us to do Tom Hardy's Venom, a movie we've both been keen and mortified at seeing one day. Mainly because of a little-known artist known as Eminem. That man.
He performed at the Oscars earlier this year.
He's an Oscar nominee, right?
He won.
Oh, that's right, for 8 Mile, right?
Yeah, Lose Yourself.
How come he didn't get it for Eminem? For Eminem, how come he didn't get it for Venom?
Well, Academy, they're hacks.
Before next week's episode, Bartek, I'm going to ask this to you now, and I want you to give me a different answer next week. What movie in a superhero franchise movie should Eminem do a title song for next? So we already did Venom. Can't do Venom again. We got to have another superhero. Who should he do? I want him to do Spawn. That would be a good one. Eminem doing Spawn. That would be pretty good. He would do something with that, I'm sure.
Mad Hatter.
Mad Hatter?
Yes.
That superhero movie, the Mad Hatter?
Well, because Venom's a villain, right?
Oh, of course. So you want Jervis...
Tetch? Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
As played by, and this is tying back to something we said last year, by Bill Murray.
I would kill for that. And directed by none other than McG from Charlie's Angels fame and Terminator Salvation. That would be a great directing choice.
And to bring it back to the obvious, main song done by Eminem.
I think Spawn would be a good one, and his song would be like Venom, but it's said with Spawn in the title.
Spawn.
Gotta go Spawn. And
Mad Hatter.
So
It sounds like a car.
I remember we'll talk about it next episode, but Venom is the choice. I'm mortified. I'm excited.
Doing
I'm
the movie, not
scared.
just the music video, right?
Oh, wait. There's a movie? I love that. Yeah, so Venom, that's the movie. So make sure to watch it
Make sure to go get 'em.
before next episode, or you will be missing out on the juicy details. You'll miss out on the context. You need to study Venom before you experience our take on Venom. You need to really feel the Venom in you. You know, you need to go out, find a loser named Venom, and let him consume your soul. That's what you need to do, listeners. Right? Bartek, pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure.
That's a quote from you now. That's like a catchphrase. You've used that in like 15 episodes.
Is that from something?
I think it's just you.
Oh.
I think you have just said it so many times that I've reacted like, oh yeah, pleasure. I don't know. Maybe it's a Polish
Maybe I'm
thing.
thinking of enthusiasms.
What's that?
Isn't that from the Untouchables?
I assume so. You studied The Untouchables, so you know it in and out. I did
Yes.
not study The Untouchables.
I think that's a Robert De Niro line.
I would assume so. So Venom, listening people, you can find us on those social medias of Facebook and Twitter, where we post fun stuff. We ask further questions. We have links to things, joke stuff, a whole array of extra fun stuff, and where you can interact with us. We have our email, which is...
spitandpolished@gmail.com.
So you can email us at that with all of your questions, queries, concerns, that fun stuff. We will still be going ahead with our monthly show later on, down the month, of course, near the end.
The replacement monthly
The
show
replacement
is,
monthly show, the one where we talk about a TV show. So stay tuned.
Oh, tune to the station. Oh, channel. Sorry, that's
Yeah,
station's
thank you.
Radio.
You're a smart boy.
Video killed the radio.
So yeah, I have started another podcast. Bartek's smiling because he's like, "You have started another podcast, Ryan."
I was actually smiling at the non-joke I made before, but yes, that is true.
Bartek's selfish. He was smiling at himself. What a cheap man.
Yeah, I rub myself.
So
on
I
the
have
side.
started a podcast with my wife, Rachel, called Yum Podcast, in which we are doing an episode-by-episode breakdown and rewatch of the television series Star Trek Discovery. Yum, of course, being a famous line of dialogue that was uttered on television in the modern age in the TV show Star Trek Discovery. Such an iconic line of dialogue. We just had to name our show after it. So we've got a few episodes of that, like a couple of episodes of that up right now. So do feel free to subscribe, follow all that for that podcast. We're new, need the support. If you're into Star Trek or know people who are into Star Trek stuff, spread that around, follow it. It would be very much appreciated. So that's Yum Podcast. Boom.
Delicious.
Bartek? Venom, gotta go get him in my denim.